So good morning. Today we'll have as invited speaker Jonas Bergmann-Paulsen from Hydrocen. So he is innovation manager in Hydrocen, and he'll tell us more about what is Hydrocen. And he is a mechanical engineer who graduated from Antenu in 2012. And in his role as innovation manager, he has been before in other areas, in Red Cross, in United Nations, and Innovation Norway. So now I'll give the floor to you, Jonas, to tell us more about how is the innovation in Hydrocen.
Thank you, Mara. Let me just share my presentation.
Yes, perfect.
Good. Okay, so I was planning on doing this. First of all, I'm a little bit under the weather, so please bear with me if I zone out a bit or if my voice cracks. But I was thinking we could do this as a little bit of a retrospect on innovation in Hydrocen. We are relatively close to our end date. So I'll say a little bit about what first of all, who we are, what have we done well, what could we do better, organic uptake of the ideas we're coming, what should we do less of. I'll try to answer those as I go through. So first of all, Hydrocen is a research center for renewable energy. We're focusing mainly on hydropower. We started in 2017 and will be finishing now in 2024. That's why I'm saying we'll do this as a little bit of a retrospect. The center consists of a large number of partners, more than 14 total now, consisting of research partners, including Antenu, Sintef, and NINA as the primary ones. Regulating authorities as NVE and Miljødirektoratet. We have almost all power companies in Norway included. We have equipment suppliers, we have consultants. So we have more or less the full ecosystem within the renewable energy sector in Norway. The work we do is focused on a relatively diverse spectrum. We have the core technologies, meaning, turbines, generators, dams, all of the typical hydropower related hardware, but we also have like the broader picture. We look at the market, we look at how hydropower affects the society as a whole, what's the environmental impact, and all of these boundary conditions. So that's the super short introduction to Hydrocen. Also, it's good to mention that just how we look at innovation. This is not something we invented. It's commonly used in Norway, but we look at innovation as something new, something which is useful and in the end utilized. And when we talk about the impact from our innovation, it's how useful things are and to what degree they're being utilized. What we've seen, if we try to structure how we go from research to innovation, we've seen that it goes primarily through 3 different pipelines. We have the open dissemination of knowledge, the typical way we're working. We're publishing, we're presenting the knowledge we're getting through research, and that is then taken up by our partners inside the consortium, outside the consortium. We have it through education. The people we educate gets the most up-to-date knowledge on their field, and they bring that knowledge into their employment. And we have utilization of intellectual property, meaning patents, the licensing of software, and so on. So I'll go through those 3 pipelines and how we're working with those. So if you start with dissemination. In Hydrocen, we have our partners meet on an annual basis in something called the technical committee meetings. I don't have any pictures, so this is a reconstruction of one of those meetings a couple of years back, where one of our academic presenters asked the partners, again, this is power companies, equipment suppliers, regulating authorities, the whole ecosystem. And he asked, can everyone who's read one of our articles raise their hand? And this was more or less the situation. I don't think this is something new, but I think it's something we tend to forget a little bit in academia. So on dissemination, we have a very, very strong focus on non-academic dissemination. We've created a knowledge hub. I'll get a little bit more into that, but it's where we gather all our research results in hopefully a format which is useful for other than just us working in academia. We have something called researchers on demand, where companies ask us to bring the researchers who are most interesting for them to visit our partners. Yeah, and we focus on attending like the non-typical conferences, for example, where we know the industry and sector attends. Publishing quite a lot of chronicles in newspapers, taking part in debates. And what we will try to do more of now is gather more results into practical handbooks, for example, formats that we know are easy to implement for our partners. So just a little bit on the Knowledge Hub. We started this a few years back, and we looked at what are we publishing, what are we sharing, and who are our stakeholders. And when we looked at our list of stakeholders, we saw that that's ranging from the public, decision makers, high-level decision makers, middle managers, and so on and so on and so on down. And of course, the specialists in the organizations, the researchers, all of this. But what we saw was that what we published, what we shared, was mainly available for the specialists. So we started the Knowledge Hub, where we tried to define, or not define, but present our research in everything from very high level problem statements, meaning how can hydropower help in the green shift? Still interesting for a lot of people, but at a relatively high level. How does the climate change affect hydropower, and so on. And then more into thematic areas that can be pumped hydropower, sediment erosion, markets, power prices, relatively big thematic foundation to make decisions. So it's to the results, but results presented in a way more accessible than just the articles. So the purpose was that you could sort of start at one point and then get down to what's more interesting in an understandable level. So we had hopefully a more holistic approach. We've gotten quite far with this now. So phase 1 is relatively complete, and now we're starting phase 2, where we look at what's the gaps between the most detailed information we publish and how we can translate that into being really useful. So now we sort of have the menu, and we're asking our partners to pick subjects from the menu that we need to know more about. We need to make it more accessible than it already is. Then we take it from there. I'll talk about education, but I've also sort of put innovation culture in under this one. So we've looked at what we think is a good culture for innovation. We've done a survey among our students and tried to identify some gaps and done some actions to cover those gaps. So we've looked at what research says is the factors affecting team performance, especially in high-performing teams working with innovation. And what research shows is that there's mainly five things. You need to be able to trust that your colleagues deliver what they say they will deliver. You should have clear goals, clear understanding of roles, so on. You need to find the work meaningful at a personal level. That can be, I have a sufficient learning curve, I'm receiving sufficient salary, it's on the individual level. And you need to believe that the work has impact. But all of this is underline that you need to have psychological safety in the team you're working in. And for those of you who doesn't know the term, it's a feeling in a team that you can share ideas, share criticism without any fear of being punished, either on an interpersonal level, being ridiculed, or actually being punished, being taken away from the team, so on. It's not, you don't need to read the small one here. It's just a summary of it's the questionnaire we sent out to our students. We haven't done it yet for other researchers, but I think we will adapt it a little bit and do the same. But it's mainly questions trying to uncover gaps in these five areas. And we had some interesting results coming out of that. For example, when we look at the motivation of our PhD students, I guess this is way too small to be able to read, but we're asking what do you consider success? Is a high academic rating what you consider success? For some, but most don't flag that as a huge success criteria. While on the other hand, that my work actually leads to value creation and impact, that's a huge motivation factor. And with my hat on as responsible for innovation in the center, I'm of course very glad to see this. Something else which is also really good is that when we ask if they believe that their work will have significant impact, it's also a high score on that. One thing that we discovered we did not do so well was the feeling of being in a team. That's not very strange because our teams are put together of people from different organizations. The team structure is quite decentralized. There are pros and there are definite cons regarding the setup we do. We get really diverse teams when it comes to skill sets and backgrounds, which has led to really cool ideas coming up, which would definitely not happen if we had a more siloed approach. But oversight is also quite challenging, and it's much more vulnerable to interpersonal risk as the teams don't get the chance to develop over time. They shift often. They don't work together on a day-to-day basis necessarily. So we've done some actions on this. Someone quite recently said to me that we should stop calling it soft skills and start calling it essential skills, which I totally agree. So I will do that from now on. But we've done actions to strengthen the essential skills amongst our researchers and PhD students, meaning we've run workshops and seminars on communication, efficient communication, innovation management, stakeholder engagement and stakeholder management, a lot on psychological safety as a driver for innovation, and also for those who wants to look into starting their own business or something like that. We've also looked at how that can be done. Last pipeline, which is utilization of intellectual property. When we look at the setup when Hydrocen was started, that was quite a big part of the innovation strategy. This is the flow chart for how ideas should be reported and then accelerated and in the end pushed out of the center. To be honest, we've had very, very few success stories on this front. Few of the experience we've made is that research results are quite rarely reported through the DOFIs if you don't do significant engagement, meaning that me through my role have to push researchers into reporting them. Also because of the setup we have, a lot of the project ideas are presented at a very, very early stage in semi-public forums, meaning technical committee meetings, for example. And that has sort of pulled the carpet under us several times, because when we have an idea that could potentially be patented, when TTO does their background research, they see that, oh, well, you've presented this is public. even though we in the beginning thought that that was a private meeting. So it's more challenging there when you have such a large consortium, because a lot of ideas are shared quite openly. We've also seen that when we talk with the end users, often meaning the power companies, they are quite interested in the technology we're developing. But the technology we're developing, it stops at a relatively low maturity level, and we don't necessarily have the partners in place to cover that gap. So we don't have someone that can pick up the patent and develop it further, so it can actually be implemented, even though we've done market assessments that show that there is a clear need of the technology. And that also goes to the last point there, that it's the lack of continuity in research projects can be a huge challenge there, because often our research is driven by the PhDs. They have a finite date when they stop, and then it doesn't matter if the results are interesting if we don't have a clear plan on how to ensure that that continuity is kept. Yeah, we've also seen that we have challenges regarding expectation management. Partners are paying a significant amount to be part of the research center and consortium, and it's not always clearly communicated that if NTNU patents something, that comes with a cost for the partners when they want to use it. It's a matter of expectation management. It's not something we can do a lot about, but it's one of the challenges we've seen with this as well. When we look at the maturity of our research results, we are quite broad on the mid range here. We go from TRL 3 to 7 for most. We have results on further on the outskirts as well, but that's where we are. And when we've looked a little bit more detailed into what's the difference between the results that reaches a higher maturity level versus the lower ones, we see that where we don't need to change hands to bring an idea from the idea stage to prototyping, for example, we end up at the higher TRL, while in projects where we are dependent on someone else to pick up the developments, we tend to stop at an earlier stage. So some of the main takeaways on that is that we have too much of an expectation that it will be an organic uptake of the ideas we're coming out with. If we have a good idea and it has a potential market, someone will pick it up and bring it forth. That's not necessarily the case. So working on alignment and creating good interfaces, understanding how to hand over the research, who do we hand over to, I think that's key to make sure that we reach more results that gets mature enough to be used. Yeah, I'm not going to say too much about this, but it's very good to see that our results are being used by the industry in a quite significant way. It's, however, in a way that's often difficult to manage, because it is a lot about them understanding more, building a better knowledge foundation to make decisions. So it's not something that's easy to have KPIs for and measure as an innovation impact from us without going into in-depth discussions with our partners, which is something we try to do. But so just to close it off, a few of the benefits of working with innovation in a center instead of outside is that we have a huge access to like the raw resource of ideas. We have a lot of partners from different setups, so engaging with them, having them come forward with their ideas, what's useful for them, creates a much bigger pool when we look at what's new. We have, as I said, very multidisciplinary teams, meaning we get untraditional ideas, so we get a much more diverse uptake on on these ideas. We can continuously make sure that our ideas are useful by being in dialogue with our partners. Handover is easier because we have that dialogue, and we can make sure that things are aligned. And I think that didn't take too much more than 15 minutes, so not too bad on the timing. So I think we can go to questions.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. That's
You're welcome.
Very nice to see the good parts, but also the parts that could be improved and the parts that didn't work, because we tend most of the time to say the positive things and then we forget that, we had some challenge on the way. I will ask the public if there are any questions.